Hello everyone, this is Joe with B-Roll Commentary, and I'm with
Gary
and John.
Today we're doing a segment we call Hindsight Cinema, where we basically pick a year and we go back and look at what the awards were in that year and take a look at some of the other movies, and then we give our interpretation of if these awards were chosen today, what we think would be more deserving than what actually got them. The thing is, we played with the categories some. One thing you might not know is over the years these categories changed quite a bit. They change year to year really, but some significant changes when we go as far back as we are this year, which is 1986. So one of the things that most people will immediately say came out this year is the top grossing film of the year, and that was Top Gun, a movie that is synonymous with basically everybody born in the 80s, childhood. If you were a boy, you grew up wanting to be a fighter pilot, and if you were a girl, you grew up wanting to date Tom Cruise.
Yeah, I am intimately familiar with this as I was stationed at Miramar where that thing was filmed, and you have no idea how many people we got coming to our gate saying they wanted to go see the Top Gun school, despite the fact that there is no pilot training academy at Miramar.
Yes.
And also, I want to point out that once a week, that a solid week, every year, I was woken up to the entire base playing Danger Zone for our annual air show. And I hated that thing with a passion of 1,000,000 exploding suns.
And let me say that 1986, Tom Cruise was what Will Smith was to the summer of movies a few years back. Yeah, in 94 with Independence Day, I think, and a couple of other films. That was his year, was 1986. Don't get me wrong, he's done several great films since then, but 1986 was the year for Tom Cruise, I think.
Well, and 86 was other than the actual content of the year. When you look back at the data, it was a very typical year. All the movies that won awards were generally not in the top grossing films, and the best actor and actresses went to movies that you generally have never heard of.
The Academy, in my opinion, is very much like TV networks. TV networks are looking for ratings. They're not thinking about the fact that half of the group that watches a show is not the five people family with 2.3 kids, dogs.
Still don't know how you have a
I don't
point of
either.
a kid.
But sometimes you've got a group of nerds that sit around and watch a show. You know, they got to eat. They'll go to Applebee's if a commercial Applebee's shows up during a show or something of that nature.
True.
So movie companies were a lot like that, or the Academy's a lot like that. Some of the top grossing films for those years were science fiction films and adventure films and action films, which don't normally make the Academy's list. Do you not agree?
Oh yeah, no, they don't. That's what I mean. It was a typical year, and the fact that these don't make the Academy's list.
But anyways,
which is primarily one of the reasons we're doing this is because what denotes a good film? Yeah. And is it money? No. But is it the
iconicness?
Yes, which is only truly measured after the fact. Although there are movies like there are movies like Star Wars where you know right then this is going to be what it is.
Yeah.
But you don't know that Star Wars is going to end up being, this is worth $4 billion.
Yeah.
You also don't know that.
But using Top Gun as an example, you can play Danger Zone, and people may not know the song, the name of the song, who wrote it or nothing. But more than likely, they're going to look up and go, "Is it from that one old movie with the jet fighters in it?"
Which I can tell you, literally every movie that won an award at the Academy Awards, none of them anyone under the age of 30 can name right offhand. There's no way.
Oh, no.
I can't tell you.
Impossible.
I can't tell you who won certain academies because to me, I don't keep track of that. I don't care about the Oscars.
Well, there are there are four that you generally will always. You can think back and you might not be able to go, 1986, or you might not be trivia night winner, but you can think back and go, that person, that's right, Schindler's List,
Yeah,
Steven
Schindler's
Spielberg.
List
Okay,
yeah.
Yeah.
But so you can think back to the director, the best picture, the best actor, the best actress. Those four are synonymous with the award season. That's the four big ones.
Yeah.
Everybody can generally name, hey, did Schindler's List win an Oscar? And you'll go, yes.
Yes.
Did it win Best Picture? Did it win Director? Yes.
Yeah.
You generally know these things. So I'm not looking for a trivia quiz. I'm just saying, this year I can tell you that I can name every film that won, and go to a random person, hey, did this film win an Oscar for anything? And they'll go, I don't think so. Because they're just that.
They're not.
As we titled this Hindsight, this is going to be a year where it really is butchered, because some of these top grossing movies, as we're going to get into, are looked at being some of the best acting work in acting.
And they weren't recognized by the
Yeah.
Academy.
Yeah, they've gone the way of the dodo.
So what we're going to do, at least for this one, we're going to try this out. I'm going to go over previous years. We're going to be mentioning a lot of movies. Some you are going to hear of, and I only know of mine. And I know you're going to hear from some of these again, but I'm just going to mention them, and then I'm going to go over what came out that year. In general, the top little bit. Take a few minutes just to go over, and then we're going to get into what we think of what I just went over, and then what we've picked.
Okay, let me throw something out here for everybody. I want to give kudos to my two co-hosts. They both have jobs. They both have other things that take their time. I do not, other than a dog and a son. They have both taken time to research, go back and look at some of these movies that they have seen in the past and make a list. So they both put a lot of effort into this with little time. I put a lot of effort into it, but I have a lot of time. So I wanted to say kudos to them and thank you guys for putting in as much effort as you did.
Well, I will say, due to that time, this will probably be our least prolific series, because as we go, I think we're going to want to get more detailed in these. But for the first one, we're going to see what we do, because they do take time.
Oh yeah.
So we're going to start with the top grossing, and the older you go, the further back you go, this becomes more important. As you come closer to current time, it's really least important. We can spend hours debating why that is, but so number one was Top Gun. We talked about that. Number two, surprising, was Crocodile Dundee.
Wow. Seriously?
Yeah.
Okay.
And by Top Gun only beat Crocodile Dundee by $2 million.
Oh.
Now, this is domestic gross. I'm not even looking at foreign.
Yeah, we're not going to go worldwide.
That would matter in current age, in older movies. It doesn't. And then the next closest one is $40 million less at Platoon. So it was quite significant.
That is a surprising list.
Yeah.
And quite a difference in range there between second and third.
Well, the first four are so different. Top Gun, yes, it's a military movie, but really it's a romance. Crocodile Dundee, it's a comedy, but it is kind of a romance too. Platoon, full-on military movie, no romance, no nothing.
Action.
Number 4, Karate Kid Part 2.
Ah, yes, the greatest comedy of all.
Fourth grossing, $115 million.
Yeah,
yes,
my son,
the Karate Kid 2, one of the greatest comedies of all time. And if you don't believe that it's a comedy, watch the fight scene where he thinks the greatest technique of this martial art is to just basically thrash his arms back and forth without moving, like punching this guy.
Sweep the leg.
Sweep the leg. No.
Anyway, Number 5, because we don't need to stay diverse get too close. Star Trek for the Voyage Home.
Really?
And let me go ahead and tell you, hindsight on this one, we should be ashamed as a culture that this is number 5.
Arguably the worst Star Trek movie. And I am a huge Star Trek fan.
Original Star Trek movie, the one with Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock.
I think the worst Star Trek movie, period.
I do too.
And
I don't know which one you're trying to single out, but I still think
I'm a huge Star Trek fan.
This is Humpback Whales, okay?
Yeah.
This is...
We need to go into the past and steal humpback whales to talk to the aliens.
Obviously, Greenpeace was a producer on this.
I want to point out something important. You're in a technological culture that can replicate things out of thin air.
And humpback whales are going to topple.
Apparently, you can't generate a believable humpback whale song.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. Anyway.
Captain Kirk, why are you climbing the mountain? Why did you save a whale? Anyway.
Yeah.
Number 6, Back to School. Surprisingly.
Rodney Dangerfield.
Oh, yeah. I couldn't remember what that one was. Yeah, Rodney Dangerfield.
91 million. That's really crazy. Number 7, Aliens. Can you believe Star Trek Voyage Home grossed more than Aliens?
Yes, I can at the time.
Because
I'm sure later movies, that was not the case.
Yeah.
But
by far, though, for me, the greatest surprise, although Gary will have to answer this, Eddie Murphy was a huge star. I mean,
yes,
huge
he was.
Star in the 80s.
Golden Child, right?
For those of you...
Golden Child is number 8.
For those of you that don't remember, the reason he said I would have to answer it, I'm 53 years old. I was in my 20s in 1986. I saw these on the big screen when they came out, unlike my companions, who caught them
4 years later from the VHS.
Yeah.
Or,
VHS,
significantly longer for those of us born in the year 1986.
But I have to admit, they're both huge movie fans, and this is not just talking off the top of their head. They actually have seen a lot of these movies.
Yes. We, growing up, one of the cheaper things you could do is rent a movie.
From
Blockbuster. So Friday nights was pizza and movie night for years growing up.
And for those kids who might be watching, Blockbuster is like Netflix that was in a building that you had to physically go to.
But you could rent old movies sometimes for $1.
Yeah, so
instead of paying $19 for streaming.
So I still remember the weekend that we rented The Postman. And when those weekends happened, you were just screwed.
Yeah, the weekends when you get the bad movie and you're just like, well, we have it for the weekend. Life's tough. Get a helmet.
Yeah, you got the good movie. You watched it 2 or 3 times a weekend. You got a bad movie. You watched it once and prayed to God nobody hit play on the VCR again.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, Golden Child, and then to finish it off, Ruthless People.
Really?
Yeah. 71 million. And number 10, surprising it's not higher because it is such an icon, is Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Huh.
I would have thought it would have been higher. I didn't bother looking at release times and whether these take in the rollover to next year. Or
whether they took in the Thanksgiving holiday or the Christmas
holiday.
holiday.
Yeah, the important thing is it was in 1986.
Yeah, we were just, this isn't that in depth, but I was surprised at that one. That's a pretty good snapshot of the year, I feel.
Well, I agree with you. There's a good snapshot.
Because,
But for those of you that want to know about popularity, and this is purely an opinion-based poll, IMDb lists over 3,000 movies released in 1986, and they list them by popularity, rated
by the people online.
Somehow by the people online.
Yeah, I think IMDb is all user rating.
Yeah.
So
but Top Gun still came out on top.
Top Gun still came out on top. Yeah.
Anyways.
Just a little hint, none of the movies we mentioned are in my picks in any form or fashion.
I think there might be one or two.
Not saying none deserve it to get a head start punching these other two's choices. I'm just saying I mentioned those. That's a good snapshot, and still none of those made my choice.
One made my choice.
I'm not gonna lie, I don't remember how many made mine. That's why I wrote it down.
Going on, yeah, I had to get to look at this stat sheet while I'm looking at my list, so I have the ability to cheat there. But so folding back around to what the Academy thought of the year, the best film, hands down across all awards that season, was Platoon.
Okay.
That dates this Academy Awards more than anything. Platoon does not. Well, we'll get to that.
We'll discuss things about Platoon and such.
Director was Oliver Stone, who's a phenomenal director. Look him up. You should know him, or you will soon. I think he has a new one coming out.
Which, let me tell you.
And by the way, he directed Platoon.
Platoon.
That's what he got.
Yeah.
Best Actor was split, but the Academy Awards, which is what we're mainly doing, is Paul Newman in The Color of Money. That's a Tom Cruise movie, by the way. The Top Gun, by the way, was a Tom Cruise movie, for those who don't know that. This was a pool hall hustling movie.
Oh, yeah.
To put it the most basic.
Actually, sort of, kind of a sequel. Newman's character is, if I remember correctly, a character he portrayed on his own in another movie at some point. So, not really a sequel about his character, as Tom Cruise was more the focus of the movie, but the character was a repeat character, if I remember correctly, and I just wanted to throw that out there.
And basically, that's the end of what generally matters, in my opinion, because the other two movies, Best Actress was Children of a Lesser God. To be fair, there was not a lot of good female roles that year. If you go and look up the year in a whole, literally Goldie Hawn in Wildcats is really punching up there for the best
Actually,
female role.
I disagree with you, but anyway, my best actress will come up in a little while.
But Marlene Matlin, she's a deaf actress, the only deaf actress to win an Oscar, and she won for Best Female. And that role was understandable somewhat, but then it was Michael Caine for Best Supporting Actor in Hannah and Her Sisters, which is a Woody Allen movie.
Which nobody...
Woody Allen pretty much means you just either like Woody Allen movies or you don't. I don't.
Yeah. You like Zombieland.
Best Supporting Actress was Diane West from Hannah and Her Sisters. To be fair, I think she did have the best role in that movie. And then the rest is just Best Original Screenplay, Adapted Screenplay, which is not something we're getting into. And Best Foreign Film, not something we're getting into.
Best
orchestral score.
Yes.
It's actually not one of the ones that they did.
Really?
Yeah.
Surprise! That time they did not care about the music.
Pretty much.
Did they do cinematography?
No.
Nope.
Wow.
No, this is before they really got into
And let me say this. That is a true shame, because one of the most beautiful pictures ever shot was released in 1986, I think. And that was Labyrinth.
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
Oh, yes.
I think it was truly one of the most beautiful pictures ever shot. And I'm really sad they didn't do cinematography that year.
So the whole point of this particular show is, we just pointed out, this year was one of the more glaring examples of it. The Academy Awards a lot of times likes to reward what they think their craft, thespians, should strive to be, what both them and their craft and their perception of that craft should be. So, and it's voted on by Screen Actors.
Not as much as the SAG Awards are.
Not as much, but I mean, it's made up across the industry, but it's voted on by people in the industry. And what you get a lot of times is this disassociation with those the movies are made for, which is who pays for them, who pays the return.
The audience.
The audience. And those who are making. and it's one of the problems with Hollywood. There's always seems to be this head-to-head grab. It's lessening more in these days. Marvel has done a lot to do this. Disney, I should say, has done a lot to help combat this because there's more money if these two can meet.
Lord of the Rings is a perfect example.
Yep.
That was a big one.
Just of what Joe is saying is going on now that
just some
didn't happen back then.
Yeah, just some disassociation from the creator and the intended market. And this goes to show it quite a bit. The only movie that at all was rewarded was Platoon, and I think it shows that was a throw me from the guild to the audience, because Platoon does not hold up. If you watch that movie today, it is nowhere near better than the acting we see in some of these other movies.
And we're all going to give our own choices on some
but we're
categories later.
Yeah. But one of the things I want to mention to back that statement up, this year, and I'm going to go quickly, I just picked the top 32 movies. These will either mean something to you or not, but these were all top movies, and most of these were not mentioned just now. I only mentioned, I think, a total of 11, and here's 32. Highlander, Top Gun, Aliens, Color of Money, Karate Kid Part 2, Hoosiers, one of the greatest sports films of all time, An American Tale, one of the greatest non-Disney animated films of all time, Little Shop of Horrors, one of the greatest cult classics of all time. FX2 was better, but FX was an excellent movie. Check it out. Delta Force, one of the best action movies of all time. Cobra, another action movie. Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Labyrinth, one of the best set designs of its age. Big Trouble in Little China, probably the second best cult following movie, or first, depending on how you want to argue it. The Great Mouse Detective, one of the best animated movies of that decade. Transformers, the movie, many people think the best animated movie of all time.
One of them is at this table.
Yeah.
Maximum Overdrive, an excellent Stephen King adaptation. Check it out. Machines come alive and decide they're done with humans.
Be very careful going into this with great expectations. Story is great.
It's a Saturday
setting is
afternoon movie, but it is not winning an Oscar for anything. But it's
even
it's
today
good.
it's not winning.
The Fly with Jeff Goldblum, one of the best horror movies of all time. In the top 100. In the top 100. Crocodile Dundee, Firewalker. You know, there was this subgenre in the 80s of movies making fun of themselves, and action movies making fun of themselves were the best ones.
Yeah, and
Firewalker is one of them.
True.
If you don't know the movie, Chuck Norris, Louis Gossett Jr., and Melody, I can't think of what her last name is, but anyway, they're in the movie. Chuck Norris doing comedy bits after all the action movies he was famous for is a little...
He could always make fun of himself, though.
Is a little better than some of the other comedy bits that people do that make fun of themselves.
William Shatner took a long while before he could do it.
Yeah.
Chuck Norris has always been able to do it.
The only person allowed to make fun of Chuck Norris is Chuck Norris. Hey, look, I made a new joke. Go me!
Heartbreak Ridge, which if you want to know what happened in the early life of Gran Torino, watch Heartbreak Ridge. Platoon, Wildcats, that's Goldie Hawn, a very good sports movie. Kind of think, what was that, Sandra Bullock, The Blind Side?
I kind of think Remember the Titans more than I do
Blind Side, but more of a comedy. Short Circuit, an excellent sci-fi movie about robots coming to life, AI.
It is actually listed as a comedy, and if you watch the movie, you will understand why.
Stand By Me, which you will hear about again later. 52 Pickup. This is one I guarantee you have not seen. You need to go look it up. I'm not going to say anything more, but it's a noir crime thriller ahead of its time. 52 Pickup. Three Amigos, comedy movie. Critters, an excellent
comedy sci-fi B movie.
For those of you who love Hannibal Lecter, You need to go check out Manhunter. It is the first appearance of Hannibal Lecter on
yes,
the big screen.
Let me tell you right now, it's not the best appearance of Hannibal Lecter. It is the first one.
I think it's a lot better than it gets credit for. I think the only Silence of the Lamb beats it.
Well, I do too.
Children of a Lesser God, which we've talked about, and Hannah and Her Sisters, which we've talked about. So there's a list of 32 movies, half of which or more you haven't even heard of. The year, basically, if you spent a year watching these movies, it wouldn't be that bad.
Mark?
So that's just a short list of the movies. Basically, I knew, for me, the top movies in the different categories that I was going to represent was in that list, so I just stopped with that. There are some others that are worth watching for sure. And if I was going to do a top 30, I don't even know that all of these would be in the top 30, even though there's like 30 there. I know of at least a couple others that would actually make it, that would kick something out from this list. But basically, we didn't really get hung up on categories. I myself chose a Best Picture. Another category that really sparked this whole podcast idea, which was Best Ensemble. There are a lot of times that we would sit around and talk movies, and there were movies that just struck a chord with us that for no reason should be considered the greatest movie of a year, but it was really the cast. The ensemble of the cast made this movie something that was better than its writing, better than its directing, it better than anything. It was just these people and I'll tell you one right now. I don't know what year it come in, but if you want to know what I'm talking about, go watch The Usual Suspects.
Oh, fantastic.
Fantastic. But when you look at the plot, it's like, even back then, it's been, if you read any pulp at all, it's something that had been done and done and done. But the cast, and if you ever go watch the making of, the cast felt the same way. One of the most famous scenes in that movie is them in front of the lineup, sitting in front of being picked out of a lineup.
Yeah.
And they're sitting there and they laugh through the whole scene. That whole scene, they're laughing, they're making fun of the detectives, and they can't keep a straight face. And the detectives are getting pissed off because you're supposed to stand there and be still and let someone behind a mirror take a look and try to identify one of you. And you find out in the commentary that's in there because the actors were that close and having that good a time. They couldn't stop laughing. They couldn't stop cracking each other up. And the director was getting pissed off because they were wasting hours and hours of budget and film because they couldn't get a 5-minute scene shot.
Because they were laughing so hard.
To the point that the director had to change it and put it in there. But so, anyway, that's what we're talking about. That's why we're doing this. I chose a Best Ensemble, I chose a Best Actor, and I chose a Best Animation.
Okay.
Those are my only ones. I didn't choose actress. We'll get to why in a little bit. But those are my 4 categories I chose. I think there are more and less.
Yeah,
I've got those and a couple of others as well.
Yeah.
And so does John. Let me say, when Joel talks about what started the idea behind the podcast, he means the entire podcast, not just this episode.
Yeah, I mean the reason we're on YouTube.
Yeah, the reason we're on YouTube.
Yeah, it was literally just how long and how in-depth we would sit down and debate, why is this film not more iconic than it is? Why did this one never win an award for anything?
Who would we put here?
Me and Gary we have watched more films. Gary used to work at a video store. I grew up watching movies all the time. They were my escape. They were things that I enjoyed. And so we have seen more films than the average person.
Yeah.
Because it was more of a hobby for us than something to do on a Friday night.
Yeah.
So we would debate for hours on end, and this is one of the things we'd come up with. And I would say that if this is something that interests you, to do what we just did, which was basically pick a year, go through and just kind of stick away from what's been fawned over for that year and look at the other stuff.
Yeah, look at some of the stuff that's not been
exactly.
Because your list might be something like ours. and if nobody else does anything, I'm going to just start.
Go ahead and start. Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to pick one that I know we all generally have. For me, I'm picking Best Picture.
Okay.
And we may debate these, but we're not saying anybody's wrong
in
this.
This is just for me, the Best Picture for this year. Gary agrees or doesn't, it's fine. But for me, it's Highlander.
I'm surprised.
Interesting choice.
Love the movie. I just was not prepared for that to be your top pick.
Looking at this movie was a sci-fi movie that really pushed the bounds of sci-fi during that time. The idea that you had a movie that was about the history of
pretty much the world,
medieval in the world, being wrapped up into some type of sci-fi magic that kept these people alive and allowed them to come through time. It was just,
for those of you that haven't seen it, they don't pass through time. They actually live
through the time.
The time.
You're being given characters that are literally dealing with hundreds upon hundreds of years of life
and experience,
and it just gives a depth to a character that I just really resonated with my enjoyment of film. And maybe I'm tacking more of the lore onto the love of this film because I know what comes in the future, in the sequels and in the TV series. But Highlander, it's got Sean Connery, it's got Lloyd, and he's left me. What's his full name?
Clancy Brown's in it. Sean Connery's in it. Why can I not
remember
the name of the Highlander?
Christopher Lambert.
Christopher Lambert. There it is.
Wow, we all just
all three
blanked.
just blanked on it.
That's
Christopher Lambert, which I'll go ahead and tell you, me and Gary have a couple actors and actresses that are not mainstream that we're crazy about. Our top actor, spoiler, is Christian Slater. Christopher Lambert is up there though.
Yeah.
And so the whole thing really spoke to people in the 80s.
And I like how you keep leaving me out of every time. It's always me and Gary.
You were away for 5 years.
Okay, it's very
You were away for 5 years, and Joe and I would get together.
Well,
and
even
just being
on
two of
the nights
us,
we would role play, me and you would spend 2.5 hours prior to role playing.
Right.
Finally, somebody would go, "Okay, we got to start playing."
Yeah, we got to start playing.
Shut up.
Yeah.
This is true.
So it just in the 80s and in the early 90s, the idea of a sword wielding vigilante is what they all turned out to be.
Pretty much.
Even
technically,
the good and the bad, with depth of character, was just something that I felt really, when you take a picture, the sum of everything, the writing, the acting, the sets, because the scenery, oh my goodness, when they would go back in time, the scenery that they would choose, amazing stuff. The wardrobes.
I agree with you.
The trench coat.
I'm going to jump in here on top of you and tell you why this did not make my movie of the year. And it's the only problem I have with the movie. A lot of the scenes, they didn't have the technology they have now to brighten up a lot of the scenes. And when I say dark, I don't mean character-wise dark. I'm talking it was physically
Well, it was
dark on the screen.
It was a limitation at the time, but it's what they worked with.
Right.
If you watch movies from this era, whether it be Tim Burton Batman or Highlander or Miami Vice, the TV show, like this was just...
Even Aliens was...
It's what they did, so I didn't think it was any worse than any other one, and actually I think it worked out better because you had these flashes of light that were engineered to represent the magic going on.
And your swords clanging together and a spark. But that's why it didn't make mine. Other than that, I probably would have agreed with Joe on this film. But anyway.
That's my best picture, I think, for me, best picture means the sum of all
That's fair enough. I can agree with that.
And that's it.
Do you want me to go next, or do you want to do your
acting's
list?
the least important for a best picture.
Yeah, I think we should just all say it once.
Yeah, if you have a best picture, we'll go with.
Yeah, I got a best picture, and for me, this was really hard because I went through, like I said, I was alive, 20-some years old, watching these movies on the big screen. So this was a difficult choice for me. I scrolled through a lot of movies on IMDb to remind myself of what all came out in 1986. Picking a single best picture was hard. I chose Aliens.
I suspect if 90% of the people that went back to this year and had to choose a best picture, that's what they would come up with.
I would agree, because I mean, it's the sequel to the original, but it's still like
most people consider it better.
It essentially created an entire genre. Space horror was not done before that.
Not before the extent that it was with Aliens.
Yeah, before the first one and before this one, which I agree with you. I think a lot of people will say this one is better. You know,
like if somebody's like, "Oh, they're going back through re-choosing on what came out that year," oh, they're going to choose that. Like, I think for sure, you can't go wrong. It's a solid choice for sure.
It is.
Well, the reason I chose it, and yes, Joe's right, it was a physically dark film in a lot of places. But the reason I chose Aliens was the characters felt, when the character snaps, and I can't remember which one he is, but it's played by the guy that everybody talks about.
Yeah, everyone knows the quote, "Game over, man."
Yeah, game over.
Yeah.
Everybody knows the quote. When the character snaps, that to me is a true human reaction to the situation they're in.
I can't disagree with you. I can't disagree.
I don't think there was a whole lot of that in some of the other movies. That being said, the character probably would have won Best Supporting Actor if I had one, but I do not. Does anybody have anything they really want to point out that was a huge flaw in Aliens that you felt like should have kept it out of my best picture? Other than the fact that compared to some of the later films, the aliens were very foamy looking, maybe is the best word.
Again, a limitation of the time.
A limitation of the time.
I will always choose well done practical effects over CG, just because no matter how good CG gets, there's still going to be some bleed over that you can tell it's CG. At least I believe that to be the case.
All right.
Now, some of the stuff that Marvel has been doing recently with the de-aging of actors, and like they did where they added
where they took away height and weight from
added
Chris Evans,
or where they added
Captain America,
or where they added Tarkin back in Rogue One. Some of them are starting to get really close. I won't lie.
I think Marvel is actually pushing the bounds to where I no longer mind CG taking place of things.
And let me tell you, that's a big step.
Now literally getting there in 2018.
Big step for him. Matrix 3 was it 2? I thought it was 3 with all the.
It's the one with all the agents.
All the agents.
Where he's fighting like 10,000 of them in that.
Where literally it was like, oh crap, this movie's due in a month and a half. We can't render this. Screw it. Don't worry about rendering it. Just put it up.
Just put it up.
Just put it up there. Don't worry about it.
So that's a huge step for Joe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that's my best picture is Aliens. If you, by some miracle, haven't seen it, you really need to see Alien first.
I would say that might be why I didn't choose Aliens. Is because to me, Alien was a better movie. But in the minority on that, and so when I seen Aliens there, I wasn't automatically thinking, quintessential sci-fi horror movie, because to me that was the first one. This one was a sequel in every term aspect of it, and so I just didn't feel that. But I can recognize that it was an excellent movie and might have deserved it over what I chose.
One of the reasons that I did choose it is because it was a sequel, and they took the character of Ellen Ripley and transformed her during the second movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, she goes through a big change between
In the
movie
first
one
movie,
and two.
she's supposed to be the security chief or whatever, and very non-emotional and everything, but she doesn't kick butt.
And I think that it's actually, I may be wrong, but I think that the Aliens, the movie that came out in 1986, is one of the few that actually has like an actual get into the fight
Female lead.
female action heroine.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, if she's not one of the first, she's definitely one of the more memorable ones.
But that's my pick, is Aliens. So go ahead, John.
Mine, it's going to surprise the both of you because I was really leaning towards Aliens. But Heartbreak Ridge.
I knew.
You can see mine and Joe's face because we don't have a camera, but yeah, we're not really surprised.
Oh, well,
Great film, but my son was a Marine.
you think that's
So-
what colored it?
I do. Don't you, Joe?
It's a great movie.
Yeah.
It is probably the premier Clint Eastwood's a badass movie. If you really want to see him at his toughest, roughest, and meanest, this is it.
Okay,
Yeah.
and so I can't really lie. That may have influenced some because I won't lie. Not to the same extent he did because it was a different era, but I have known a gunnery sergeant or two that kind of a gunny or two that was kind of that mindset. So I can't say that it didn't color it, but you know what? I've got something on this list that I'm willing to bet will surprise at least one of you, if not both of you.
Okay,
But
well,
so yeah, I went with that. I mean, it's a great story. It tells, it's not an amazing one, but it talks about when we invaded Grenada.
Which is a fascinating subject if you want to look it up.
I agree, and it is. I agree with Joe and John both in stating that it is a fantastic movie.
And it shows one of the truest things that you will not learn outside of the military. When officers come in and they take over, they are usually idiots because they have been through shit tons of training but have no practical experience because they think they have a degree. And that, friends, is why I enlisted despite having a degree and didn't go to the officer program.
Yeah, I can tell you, as having family members and friends galore in the military, John is just another in a long list that have confirmed that for me.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, since we went...
Anybody got anything they didn't like about
Heartbreak Ridge?
Heartbreak Ridge? I think it's fair to, if you have a dissenting opinion or dissenting reason for not liking it, to voice it so that the people that are listening to this
I would,
are prepared for possibly a
other than the subject matter,
little
Grenada.
Yeah,
disappointment.
that might...
No,
Yeah.
that's a bonus for me.
Yeah.
That's a bonus for me. Other than that, I would think this would be a better choice for ensemble cast. But I definitely think it was a very good movie, and I think it was probably in the. If you go back to the Academy, I think it was probably in the running for best film.
Well, since you mentioned...
I argue with Joa
okay.
on one point.
Okay.
I was unhappy with the ensemble. Eastwood was fantastic. 99% of the characters were fantastic. There was, and John probably knew guys like this in the Marine Corps, but there was one or two characters in there that just didn't fit for me. And the one is the guy that gets killed in Grenada that just didn't fit as what I think of when I think Marine.
Well, I think there are plenty of people that manage to make it through basic that don't fit what a movie should fit.
Oh yeah,
Sure.
did a few of those.
Okay.
But anyways, I'm going to use Joe's statement as a shameless transition to best ensemble, and this one I think will surprise you guys. For me,
Do you think we're going to be surprised?
Hold on. Hold on. I'm thinking. Nope, I got it. Go ahead.
what do you think it is?
I have it labeled here. I think it's
That's an interesting choice.
I don't agree with it, but I think it's that. Go ahead.
Okay.
Best
go ahead.
ensemble. Name of the Rose.
You actually got to see the film, by
Yes, I got to see the
Okay.
movie.
Okay, never mind.
Ah,
I'm
That
wrong.
was
told
not
you
what
both.
Joe picked, by the way.
What did he say?
He said Big Trouble in Little China.
Oh, well,
What?
that was a close one, but no, I went with Name of the Rose. Come on, it's a movie. It's a detective movie. It's a detective movie in a monastery with Sean Connery as the Franciscan monk / detective, Christian Slater, who we have all agreed is one of our favorite, not praised actors. He doesn't get enough praise for it. As his apprentice, Ron Perlman in it. I mean, how can you not like?
There were several people that
Plus,
were
I
big
mean-
back in '86 in this movie.
Yeah, that's a lot of big names, and I mean, a bunch of them are because it is not a primarily American film.
He got Beauty and the Beast off of this film, didn't he?
Yes,
Ron Perlman?
Yeah.
I do believe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah, you got
the
those-
television series Beauty and the Beast, guys.
You got those three, and then there's a bunch of other names that
You
they're
recognize,
Not, yeah, you
but
recognize.
you don't.
And even if you don't recognize the name, you probably recognize the face, like the guy that comes to be Sean Connery's nemesis, the guy that shows up when Connery isn't solving the murders fast enough. I forget the actual character's name at the moment, but when I saw him, I was like, I know him from somewhere. I've seen him somewhere else.
We took a break here. You probably heard the splice, and John was actually out of the room. Gary leaned over and he says, "You forgot one," and he mentioned the Name of the Rose. And the funny thing is, Name of the Rose was what I was alluding to. If I was to make a top 30, it would make it into the top 30, although I didn't list it out.
I picked something off his list he did name.
Yeah, I didn't put it in this list because during my research I'd already picked what I wanted, and this list wasn't trying to be ultimate. I just decided to run off the names afterwards since I had the list already. And Name of the Rose is probably in the top 15 for me of the year, if not top 10.
Fantastic film if you haven't seen it, by the way.
Right?
Excellent
So,
film.
my pick for
One
best
of Sean
ensemble.
Connery's best films.
Exactly. My pick for best ensemble.
I can't argue that.
See? Told you guys should be surprised.
Well, I can, but I won't.
It'll be a lie.
It'll be only because I think there's one better.
I think there's one better
Okay.
as well.
I would say Big Trouble in Little China.
What
I'd
do
say
you-
that's more likely.
What do you think?
I think you went with what I did, so I can't say.
Okay then.
Okay.
Yeah.
My best ensemble, Stand By Me.
The look on Joe's face. Is
No,
just
I didn't go ahead and say Stand By Me's mine too.
Oh really? Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
well,
I thought that was a
Tell
look
you, we're
of
bibliophiles, or movie files, cinema files, whichever word you want to use.
cinema files. Is the
I knew that's where you had to go. The top 4 in this movie, and then the bottom 2 were amazing. So
Fantastic
yeah,
characters, fantastic acting out of the characters. A lot of people say Will Wheaton
I think it's the
gives himself way too little credit for this movie because of what he did in Star Trek.
it's his best.
This is
acting
probably his
ever.
best acting ever.
Like if somebody goes, Will Wheaton ain't an actor, I can go, I would agree with you, except
For Stand By Me.
Stand
Okay.
By Me.
fair enough.
He's a child actor though, which is why he was horrid when he grew up,
Yeah,
because he never transitioned.
yeah.
Yeah.
But as
I
a
can-
child actor, he was amazing.
And the fourth member of the main ensemble, is little heard of. And
Only now, but in the years following this movie, he was the biggest name
yeah,
of
he
the
was
4.
one of the biggest names of the 4.
He just by the 10 years after this movie, he had already burnt out.
Yeah.
But for 10 years after this movie, the 4th member was the biggest name, and that's Corey Feldman, which by
Yeah.
the way is who he's talking about. And I haven't even talked to him. I just know that's who he's talking about.
Yeah, he's absolutely right. And you've got to see this film. For me, one of the best acted moments is the leech film, or the leech scene.
Oh yeah,
Where,
absolutely.
where they have to check each other for leeches.
I blame this movie for my hatred of bugs.
And they
Of kids
have to check
specifically.
each other for leeches because they've just come out of this water that they know is leech filled.
Yeah.
And it is one of the best acted scenes, I think, out there. And that's my choice
Your backup
for
for this,
best ensemble.
your antagonist for this movie is Keith Sutherland. I mean,
Okay, so
your top four are Jerry Connell. You got Will Wheaton, Corey Feldman, and
Was it River?
Phoenix
Phoenix?
River, which sadly died not long after this movie. In the grand scheme of things, and I just feel like one, I always thought Phoenix was an actor that would be considered a Sean Penn or a George Clooney had he made it till today. So I almost regard any of his roles as iconic. But this movie specifically, in my opinion, more than any other movie, any other category, highlights the Academy's narrow-mindedness for years upon years upon years.
I agree with you.
Stand By Me should have been an Academy Award somewhere.
For somewhere.
Even if it was just for the screenplay, the directing, the actor, the supporting actor, if you wanted to call the kid supporting
writer.
actor. I mean, just
something.
It should have been, and it was denied. And I think it's one of the greatest. We'll get to some of the others, but this is one of the greatest of definitely the worst of this year.
okay, so since you guys agreed on that, I think we can skip Joe's recommendation. For
Oh
best
yeah, because
ensemble.
that was it.
So
Yeah.
Gary, which is the next category you want to talk
Well, go ahead and let Joe start the next category, even though we just skipped
I'm
his
gonna pick
best
my
ensemble.
last one, and then the next one I know for a fact someone feels better more on than me, so I'm gonna shut up after this until y'all get to this. But it's best actor, and for me, I chose actor and actress together. This is something we can and can't do. It's kind of personal to everybody what we want to do, but this year I didn't bother separating them out because, in my opinion, it was a weak year in actresses, but more specifically in roles than necessarily
The actresses.
the actresses part. I think probably the best actress of the year would be Sigourney Weaver.
which we all
agree on.
So
there you go, all across the board.
Best actress
best actress Sigourney Weaver.
for that year.
Hands down, the only person maybe might be for me Goldie Hawn in the
Goldie Hawn and Wildcats.
because it was a good role. But anyway, best actor for me, it was a toss-up. Gene Hackman almost had it in Hoosiers. If you've not seen that movie,
You need to.
phenomenal movie. But who edges him out? The Academy got it right on this one. It's Paul Newman in The Color Money, in my opinion.
I'm split on best actor. I'm split between Eastwood and Connery. You know, I'm split between them. I'm gonna lean just a little bit more towards Sean Connery, just because I'm a huge fan of Sean Connery. I've loved every movie he's ever done that I've ever seen. So I'm gonna have to give it to Sean Connery, but only by a very small margin.
Well, mine is neither of those. None of those three, I guess, is the better choice of words. And mine is Jeff Goldblum for The Fly.
Okay.
The transformation from human to fly, half fly, if you will, when he's got the left side of his body, I believe it was, that was fly, and the right side human. The acting that came out of him was very reminiscent of, and no, I'm not this old, no matter how much of a joke you make, but very reminiscent of the silent film era where there was a lot of physical acting being done because the voice wasn't there. In Goldblum's case, it was because the voice was supposed to be so disrupted by changing into this fly that he had to make up for it with physical acting.
Fair enough. I can see that. He was pretty good in The Fly.
I went with Paul Newman because I think Paul Newman got across the feeling of this man in his prime seeing someone walk in
That's younger.
and just starts tearing down everything that you built a lifetime to get to, and here comes somebody that walks in that is all of a sudden leaps and bounds above the hard work
That you put in. And
now
it's
whether
all
they
our
work
talent.
there, it's you see this play out, and we're big sports fans. Me and Gary are, so this plays out in sports more than anything else. Naturally,
and technically, this is a sport movie, even though the sport is pool. And for those of you out there, there is a difference between pool and billiards.
But it just without it being a sports movie too much on the nose, it brings across that tale, which is one of old as basically the Greek Odysseys, pretty much. And I enjoy it. I think Paul Newman really captures that role. And honestly, if I was going to do Best Supporting Actor, Tom Cruise would have been in the running for that role as well.
See, here's the problem. I don't know which one was the supporting actor and which one was the main actor in that film.
And let me go ahead and tell you, this did not get ensemble for me because my definitions of ensemble cast, which is basically it needs 3 or more.
There was 3 with the girl, but
it wasn't a strong role.
Yeah, it wasn't a strong role for her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so with these 2, if ensemble for me would have been 2 or less, 2 minimum, this movie probably would have won it for me because it's that strong of a connection between these 2 actors.
Okay. So you get more?
I have one more category.
Okay. Well, Joe's got one more category, and I've got one more thing to say about Paul Newman's performance in this movie. It was very much a mentor-student kind of, what's the word I want to use here? Vibe.
Yep.
And the mentor is slowly being surpassed by the student, and he sees it. And Joe is right. Newman played that well. You could sense almost a sense of jealousy, I guess, in Newman.
Respect for the skill he's seen, jealousy for the skill he's seen, and responsibility for developing it. Like he felt all of these things in one go.
So, very much a good choice.
I would also like to say I'm hoping that now we're seeing Tom Cruise approach the age that Paul Newman was, that Tom Cruise was one of the best at playing that youth walking into something and dealing with a mentor and the fallouts that can occur, whether it be Cocktails, The Color of Money, or Top Gun.
I knew you would.
Whether all 3 of those are technically youth walking in and showing up
and a mentor.
So I would like to see Tom Cruise reverse that role in the next decade.
You know, he kind of has already in some of Mission Impossible movies.
But I would like to see his take on a sequel to Color of Money and his take on being the Paul Newman
character.
Not just a remake, because I don't want him to try and redo what Paul Newman did, but just, they're better writers than me. Somebody can figure it out. I just think he could go with it. And he would have, as a cinephile bigger than me and Gary, Tom Cruise would appreciate it too.
I think he would. You've got one more. Did you do Best Actor?
Yeah.
My mind just
I did Sean Connery.
He did Sean
My
Connery
last category is Best Animation. I know for a fact John's got this and
I do
got
too.
a lot to talk about.
I don't have it on my paper, but I do.
So what other categories do you have, Gary?
I have Best Comedy.
Short Circuit 2.
Short Circuit.
Is it Short Circuit? Yeah, it was Short Circuit.
Circuit.
You're right. It was Short Circuit.
In 1986.
You're right. It was the first one in 1986. I got my year wrong. First one. Yeah. Because let's be honest, it's the original Wall-E.
It really is. And when he turns the three robots into the Three Stooges, you can't go wrong.
Joa has a look on his face.
Joa has a look on his face.
What is that look, Joa?
He's looking right now to see what's on his list.
If I were to pick a comedy,
it
would be between Crocodile Dundee and Big Trouble in Little China. And I would probably personally think Crocodile Dundee was a better, but I would think Big Trouble in Little China holds up more.
My
for the hindsight
choice was Big Trouble in Little China for best comedy.
I'll tell you the only reason that I didn't. Certain moments felt really forced. When he's talking to the old man and he's like, "Egg, what's in the bottle? Magic potion." Thought so. What do we do with it?
Drink it.
Thought so.
Yeah.
That felt really forced to me, and there's moments like that that feel really forced to me, and you can't do that with comedy. You can sometimes force it and it comes off a little bit funny, but for me there were some forced moments in there I didn't feel like.
Well, I chose it as an overall best film because there were some areas I weren't happy with either in Big Trouble in Little China, which is hard for me to say, and even harder for me to say because I love her as an actress. Some of those moments came from Kim Cattrall. Her performance was good, but not her best performance.
For me, it would be Crocodile Dundee, mainly because of that. I think Crocodile Dundee was in the race for an ensemble cast. There's not a bad role in that movie. And
there's really not.
No, there isn't. Yours is hard to beat.
I just hesitate to throw ensemble on a comedy.
Right.
Because there's so little gravity to the whole thing that I just
a lot of times you can replace somebody that's great in a role in a comedy
and it not have the same impact it would in a major
not have the same impact that it would in some other movie.
So
because it can even become the running joke.
For that reason, if I had chosen, I would have probably chose Crocodile Dundee. Although I will say for a fact the biggest today in sales, DVD watches, Netflix watches, it's Big Trouble.
Big Trouble in Little China.
Easily.
I can agree with that.
Crocodile Dundee is not holding up.
Big Trouble in Little China quickly became a cult classic. And there's a cult classic out there that someday we'll talk about that I will absolutely love. So
so I got a few.
Did you do best comedy?
Yeah, I told you Short Circuit.
Oh yeah.
Your brain is really
my brain's really not working today.
You want some caffeine?
No.
Okay.
I don't. It ain't sleepy. It's the fact that I get to thinking about mine. Anyway.
I'm gonna double tap these for one reason. They are nearly interchangeable for me. It's only because of category. Top horror and top sci-fi, Aliens and The Fly, and you can interchange them. You can label Aliens a top sci-fi movie because it has created its own universe, which you find throughout the movies. You find it in Blade Runner, you find it in the Predator movies. You know, it's become synonymous with sci-fi, but you can also look up and go, well, other than certain elements of it, The Fly is really just a sci-fi movie because it's about a guy getting merged with becoming a giant man-sized fly.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, you can also flip it and be like, Aliens was meant to be a space horror movie. They literally labeled, I think, Alien as the first space horror movie. And you can also label The Fly because there are moments, especially towards the end, when he's full-blown man-fly thing that are really unnerving and creepy.
Yeah.
So I'm doing double tap those just because you can interchange them however you want. I actually said Aliens for horror and The Fly for sci-fi only because Aliens, when I was younger and I saw it the first time, actually scared me at moments where The Fly never did.
I can say I agree with both of those. I think I even said when running these off, when I got to The Fly, one of the best horror movies of all time. I agree with both of those. Aliens, we've already talked about as well.
Yeah, we've talked
beat
about
it. So, yeah, I agree. 100%.
Okay, I have one more category.
Okay, I've got a few more, so...
Well, you guys I have two more categories counting animation. We've touched on it, but we didn't go into it. And this one, I don't know that everybody was prepared for this category. Best director.
Not at all. Gave it zero consideration. So I'm
gonna
abstain from this.
You might be surprised that you could choose a best director based on one person directing a particular film.
Yeah, Clint Eastwood, I know, but
I chose Clint Eastwood and Martin Scorsese, whatever, for The Color of Money. I couldn't choose between the two. I think they were both fantastically directed films.
I would go with Scorsese in this particular instance. So
Fair enough.
I think that's why I made the choice I made. I think that lends a pretty significant part to the role, but I didn't bother actually writing it out.
That's fine.
Like I said, I'm abstaining because I'm wagering that Clint Eastwood, if I remember correctly, did Heartbreak Ridge.
Yes, he did. He
directed and he starred in it. Yeah.
Directed and starred in it.
That was the only one, so I can't really speak to it because I haven't seen the Scorsese film, so I can't really speak to it. So I'm going to have to say Clint Eastwood if I have to say one. Otherwise, I'm just going to abstain.
Okay.
The other two on my list.
Okay.
Top effects, and again, I'm split. It's Aliens or it's Labyrinth. Because
okay, let's specify. To me, there's two different things between effects and special effects.
Okay, FX is practically done stuff using puppetry, animatronics, stuff like that.
Building costumes.
Special effects is CGI, things of that sort that you cannot
explosions,
easily,
things of that nature. Okay.
So I said between Aliens and Labyrinth.
I think no matter how you split it, I think Aliens has this.
I agree with you. I only want to put Labyrinth on there because it does a very good presentation overall. But yeah, Aliens is the one that I have top billing on that. It's just I was kind of split down the middle for it.
I agree that Aliens is probably going to win it. I do, however, and I apologized to John earlier today. We are not flawless. We are human. And I made a mistake. I put a film in my head as being a different film. I saw Labyrinth on the list, and I thought of a different film.
Yeah, you thought of Legend.
I thought of Legend with Tom Cruise, which I think came out the year before, the year after. Either way, and I thought of it.
If that had been on there, that would have been my pick for best FX, possibly also for best
but anyway,
actor.
Putting that in there kind of colored me a little bit.
My fiance is a child of the 70s, so
yeah,
there was no way I was going to confuse David Bowie for.
Well, Tim Curry. But yeah, either way, well, I've never even thought about Tim Curry playing the villain in Legend. Yeah. But anyway, let's get to best animation. We have two just
I'm going to go first.
Different opinions here.
I do not feel as strongly on mine, although I do disagree with the strong opinion in the room.
Two strong opinions in the room because I agree with my son.
Yeah. The best animated movie of the year is An American Trail. I feel like. I feel like it was the first attempt I feel it was a significant movie in that it's not a Disney movie. It is attempting something original, and it was reaching out to an audience of children, but throwing in a story and a environment that would pull in all ages. I still enjoy this movie today as much as I enjoyed it as a kid, and so that is my pick, although I am outnumbered.
Yes. Fievel was a great story to be told. So I have to agree that it was a great movie. But I got to side with John on this one.
Transformers. Transformers, the animated movie, hands down. Why does it win? Number one, to this day, I still get choked up when... I'm going to give a spoiler alert, even though this is a movie from literally 32 years ago. I'm giving a spoiler alert, because there are going to be people who think I'm meaning Michael Bay's
Transformer. This is an animated version of Transformers from '86 that was definitely worth watching.
FYI, folks, profanity alert, ahoy. Because I do not like Michael Bay's.
We don't have to go into the profanity.
We are going to, just in case it slips out, profanity warning. I do not like Michael Bay's crap fest. Okay? Number one, my biggest complaint about his, I can't tell what's going on because he made them 90% metal color and like 10% actual color that lets me know who is who. In this one, the animated one, 90% color with 10% metal and chrome colors. So I can tell when Optimus Prime is beating the holy crap out of somebody, I know that it is Optimus Prime. As opposed to I'm like, okay, there's metal beating on more metal, and okay, the guy standing up has Optimus Prime's voice. I have now determined that Optimus Prime won that fight.
Not to mention the fact that in the 80s, Transformers and G.I. Joe were the two cartoons
that dominated the
market. I mean, come on.
Number three, to this day, I still get choked up when Optimus Prime dies. I gave you my spoiler warning. If you didn't pay attention, too late. Optimus Prime dies in that one, just like in the other movies, and he does not come back. He is dead until they made five more seasons. I'm pretty sure, because I think it was in season 10 that they brought him back.
And even then, he was reanimated by aliens and not by the Matrix.
Yeah. 4. The main villain, Megatron, or I should be more accurate, after Megatron dies and is rebuilt into Galvatron, is voiced by Leonard Nimoy. How can you not like an animated movie where the bad guy is voiced by Mr. Spock? And also, the overarching bad guy, Unicron, the World Eater, by Orson Welles. How can you not like that for the number one? Also, little tiny shout out, whoever is directing the Bumblebee movie, thank you God that I can actually look and say, that is Soundwave, that is Optimus Prime, that is Starscream, and Bumblebee is an actual freaking Volkswagen Beetle.
Yeah, Michael Bay's got issues, and I'm glad they are no longer on the Transformer franchise.
The Transformer franchise, or the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle franchise, he literally... If I ever meet Michael Bay, I am kicking him in the balls for shitting on my childhood twice.
Every time I watch
like
Transformers,
a field goal
keep waiting for the scene of a bus running over Michael Bay, and it just never happened.
Yeah.
We all were hoping for that, and it never happened. But I'm serious. That is why it wins. The soundtrack is awesome. It is a love letter of the 80s. It is... You get to see... some of the Autobots and the Decepticons die on screen, so there are actual consequences, unlike a lot of cartoons there were in the 80s, where it was just, the old joke that Cobra and G.I. Joe, when they were shooting into the air because no one ever got hit. So there are actual consequences. Characters die on that. Leonard Nimoy is your bad guy. Optimus Prime, it is actually a pretty sad scene when he dies.
I'll give you it's in the top 5 of the 80s.
Better be in your top 2 of the 80s.
5?
It better be in your top 2 of the 80s for animated film.
Top 5 of the 80s.
Are you talking all movies or animated?
Animated.
That's not saying much. There was only 3 big names. There was American Tail. There was The Great Mouse Detective.
Not 86.
Of the 80s in general?
80s.
Okay, that's a little bit better.
Yeah.
That's a little bit better. But if you're saying 86, there was only 3. How does that work?
John is very adamant that this is the
It's better
best
than The Great Mouse Detective.
film.
Yeah, I want to point out.
Anime-wise.
I want to point out. The reason I'm so adamant about this is I'm a huge Transformers fan. I have the movie on DVD and saved on my laptop. I have the entire run of the cartoon series from season 1 to season 10 on DVD. I have multiple original Gen 1 1980s Transformers action figures.
Still.
They have taken out of the box, they have been played with, they've been used and abused, so they're not anywhere like collector's edition, but I still have them. I have the 25th anniversary in the box Optimus Prime, and I have a limited edition, like, I think
I don't remember, but
it's
anyway.
like under 1,000 Optimus Prime statue. So when I say that I am a huge Transformers fan, I could probably count on one hand the franchises that I like more than the Transformers. So when I watched the first Michael Bay movie, I was like, that's not
All right,
good.
we're not here to talk about Michael Bay.
Quiet, I'm talking. I'm going to talk a little bit more about Michael Bay.
No, we're not here to talk about Michael Bay. We'll talk about bad movies one other day.
Fine.
Not today.
Fine. But that is my rant about why Transformers is the best one. That, and of course, the Dinobots trying to defeat the giant planet-sized Transformer Unicron
by eating it
and by kicking it in the butt. And of course, Grimlock immediately realizing that he needs a new strategy.
Okay. I'm going to grab the reins here for a minute.
Well, that's fine.
Does anybody want to make any other comments about a movie from 1986 that they need to mention? Because I have got at least one that you need to check out if you haven't seen it.
I'm pretty sure I'm done. That was my last category, was animation.
I don't have this down as a category. I just know this movie. And it is Nomads. If you haven't seen it, you need to see it. I personally think Nomads, I don't know how to describe this film. Some people call it a suspense film. Some people call it a horror film. It's just a really great film for its time, for its budget. I don't know there were any real big name actors in it, but the story is what did it. So, unless anybody has anything else they want to add?
No, I think I'm done.
Joe?
No, I think I'm good.
All right, looks like we're finished. Once more for B-roll commentary. We are out of here tonight, and we will see you soon.